It takes a few minutes, I'm afraid, or a minute or so, sorry. Has anyone got access to Councillor Thomas's mobile to gently prod him to make him aware, please? Thank you, Zach. Okay, good evening and welcome. We are now live on YouTube. So good evening and welcome to yourselves, councillors, and to those residents who are watching and one resident attending our Zoom meeting live onto YouTube today. Today is the 13th of July and the time is 7:02. So in terms of our agenda today, we will be going through the agenda in the normal route or the normal manner. And the first item on the agenda is public participation. So I understand you wish to speak. So I'm going to invite you. You keep merging out.
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everybody. You all know me, I think. And I certainly wrote to you, or written to you all in the last 2 weeks. I have picked up from some of you and on social media that there is some, let me say, disquiet amongst the councillors and a lack of coming together of councillors as a group in the manner that there was last May when I stopped being a councillor. And I wrote to you to offer my services to try and mediate between those of you who find it difficult to deal with others amongst you. And I'm here really to reiterate that offer. I think I know all of you well enough to be able to do that. And I think it would be an advantage to make use of my my ability to do that before you seek external mediation, if that's what you intend to do, which doubtless will cost you money from the public purse. So I really wanted to come here tonight just to reiterate that offer and to take any questions any of you might have. No questions.
Thank you very much, Howard, for coming forward today. I think what we'll now do is move on to the formal part of the agenda. I will now mute you. Thank you. Moving on to apologies. Clark, can I have apologies? I'm now going to invite you to unmute.
Apologies are from Councillor Rogers, Councillor Hearn and Councillor Hinks.
Thank you. We now move on to point 2 on the agenda, which is the declaration of interest. Member of council are to declare any interest they might have in the agenda items today in accordance with the requirements within the council code of conduct. So are there any councillors who wish to declare an interest? Councillor Greening, I'm inviting you to unmute.
Yes, obviously I have an input on item 7, Christmas decorations.
Thank you. And have you been able, Councillor Green, have you been able to get hold of Councillor?
Yeah, so Ian has said that, quote, on my own at the Mo, can't leave pizza room, exclamation mark, will be late.
Okay, so in that, thank you very much, Councillor Greening, for verbatim providing us with his response. Can I mute? I will mute you now, Councillor Greening. What I'd like to do then is put a proposal forward to council. Planning, which is point 4 on our agenda, I would like to move down to point 11, for example, and move the picnic party in the park up the agenda to 4. And that gives Councillor Thomas some time as the planning officer to attend the meeting. So are we all in agreement? So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Tudgay, and a seconder, Councillor Design. And can I have a vote, please, from the floor to move the agenda? So Councillor Ralph, myself, Design, Power, Vag, Edington, Tudgay, Waters, Smith, Greening and Old. Thank you. So with that in mind, we'll move on to point 3 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the last meeting. So you would have all received a copy of the minutes on email. Have all of you received papers? I'm going to re-ask that question. You've all received papers, thank you. Can I then go through each page at a time and ask if there are any amendments? Page 1. Page 2, starting with 0024 and ending in 0028. And page 3, starting in 0029, the skate park, and ending in the declaration that all minutes are draft until signed at full council today. Are there any amendments anyone wishes to make? No. Okay, thank you for that. So yes, Clark, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Can I just ask clarification for a proposal, seconder and a vote for the 8th of June, because it wasn't clarified at the last meeting, Chairman. It was amended, but the actual minutes need to be signed at the meeting. Thank you.
Have you checked the recording, Clark? Because we actually went through the minutes and we did actually agree them, and that would be an e-signatory at that point.
Yeah, I didn't see a proposal, seconder, but I will recheck.
Okay, well, we can redo it again, but if we redo it, Councillor Tudgay, I'm going to invite you to speak, so can you unmute, please?
Sam, is it possible to vote them through now?
That's what I would like, Ray, please.
Right.
It was to vote them through with the amendment.
Yes, yeah.
Because at the time, the vote was purely for the amendment. There was no vote to sign the minute.
I understand, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In that case, and I'd like to propose that they were a true and accurate record with the amendments.
And Councillor Vag is seconding that. And do you need full council? Or are you okay?
Yes, please, a vote, please.
Can I have a vote of council, please? So there's myself, Councillor Ralph, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vag, Councillor Eding, I apologise. Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, and against Councillor Edington and Councillor Old. And is there anyone abstaining? No. Is that sufficient, Clark?
That's for the 8th of June. Thank you, Chairman. And then we just need your proposer, seconder, and vote for the last one on the 22nd of June, please.
Thank you. So can I have a proposer for the minutes we've just reviewed for the 22nd of June? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ralph, a seconder, Councillor Vag, and can I have a vote from the room on the minutes from today on the 22nd of June? So Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrow, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vag, Councillor Edington, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, and against and abstaining. Councillor Old is abstaining from voting the minutes on the 22nd of June. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is now the revised agenda, because we've moved the number 11, picnic party in the park, up to point 4 on the agenda. So councillors will be aware at the last meeting, I asked that the party in the park, or the picnic party in the park, actually was included in the agenda today, because I felt it was important for us to decide how we manage that going forward. So this is a discussion about Friends of Wincanton Community Hospital, but also inviting residents to be part of the working group to actually develop that alongside council. And what I'd like to do is actually open it up for conversation. So in terms of comment in terms of councillors, what views you have on that, what you'd like to see, and next steps, please. So would anyone wish to talk? Silence. Councillor Gazine, you've been invited to speak. You're,
Can
you-
you hear me now?
yes, thank you.
How do we go about numbers, controlling or invites, or how do we control the people who are going to attend this? And how do we police it, basically, if we're going to do it this summer when
Yeah.
things are still rolling around? How
Yeah.
do we manage this?
So what I would say, it's a really good question, but can I hold that for a moment? Are there any other questions? Councillor Edington, you've been asked to unmute, and then Councillor Tudgay.
I'm just referring to Kirsten's email to everybody regarding plans for a public party gathering in the sports centre, sports ground, round about next Easter, by which time, hopefully, restrictions will be lifted and it could actually go ahead with a plan. So it
Thank
seems a bit that or start planning anything before we know that restrictions are going to be lifted.
Thank you, Councillor Edington. Can I invite Councillor Tudgay?
Well, on a similar vein, I would be very against any type of gathering this year. I really do think, if you look around the country, we have various incidents. We had the incident at Burnham-on-Sea. You know, on the opening Saturday, the pubs opened. We've had the Leicester situation. We've got the situation in Herefordshire on the fruit farm. We have these mini lockdowns, and I really don't want to see us doing anything that might replicate that situation here in Wincanton. So I would be very against anything at all happening this year.
Okay, so Councillor Edington, I'm just going to mute you, and Councillor Tudgay, and I'm heartened to hear your sound words of well, advice and guidance on this, because from my perspective, I would 100% agree with you. Government policy states that no gatherings can come together, and in fact it will be helpful for us to be in a position to have policy documents or government guidance around it before we actually secure a date. I 100% agree for the picnic in the park. The picnic in the park and the sports ground are two different things, and I think we probably need to look at them independently because of that. But in terms of the picnic in the park, I was going to suggest, because that we convene a working group around this to actually then decide when and where we move forward, so that the key people are involved from the beginning. So it doesn't need to convene necessarily before September or even longer, but this isn't about confirming a date. It's about bringing the right people together. So when we are able to move forward, we can then, as part of a wider working group, then the council decide what that looks like, and obviously in accordance with government policy. So we can leave that for now, or we can bring it back at a later date. But from my perspective, we have two different work streams. Councillor Tudgay, I'm going to unmute you.
This was originally in partnership with the Friends of the Hospital. What is the view of the Friends of the Hospital? I mean, are they willing to wait till next year? Do we have any idea on their view or stance on this?
Yes, so Chuck is the person that spoke to me initially, and as far as we're both concerned, this cannot move forward until national policy allows it. So from his perspective, he's keen to be part of a working group, but not actually to do anything further around securing a date or booking anything, because currently at the moment, we don't have the national commitment or allowance to be able to do so, but there is still a strong commitment from the community hospital and residents who've approached him and local businesses to actually be supportive of the event aimed at the community and families in the park, and a low-key but celebratory model. So he's happy to wait. This is just more about gaining a commitment so that we move forward at the right time.
Thank you.
So from my perspective then, from what I've heard, in summary, from what I've heard from attendees of the call, the party in the park, which was the picnic that was proposed as an idea to recognise all the good stuff in the town, but also some of the issues that followed because of COVID, will not move forward. However, we will look to set up a working group with key people, stakeholders involved towards the latter part of this year, so we can then secure a date at the right time next year. Is that what everyone has agreed to? Clark, do I need to do a proposer and seconder for that, or are you happy for that as a statement? As a statement. So the class has acknowledged it as a statement. Thank you very much. So moving on to point 5, planning applications and review. To consider the planning application process and make changes as necessary. So if you remember, I proposed this on the last meeting because on the 26th of May, we had a short notice application that went onto the agenda before it was adequately shared with the general public to have a view. So it lent us to then review our process. So I'm going to open it up to the floor first to ask for any views on what the process might look like going forward. So if you want to raise your hand if you wish to speak. Clark, I've just invited you to speak.
Ever since I've been here, Chairman, we've always had additional plans that have always been published on a Friday. And I've always felt that that's not adequate in terms of people that look at the agenda. They don't always look at additional plans on the board on a Friday. There's nothing in standing orders that says we have to do additional plans. So that would be my contribution to this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Councillor Tudgay, you've been asked to unmute.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear what Sam has had to say. I'm just a little bit concerned that, and I would direct my question to Sam, is if we stick by the one planning date that you know when you send the agenda out, are there likely to be any items that we don't have enough time to deal with, meaning if they come late from SSDC?
Over the past year, or maybe 2 years, SSDC has become less rigid with the final date where you can comment. And most of the plans, as you've known in the past, is that they will give us an extra week or an extra 2 weeks, or they will accommodate our next meeting date, Ray. So I don't see that as being a problem.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. So I think we should stick to, if they're not here when the agenda goes out, they go on to the next agenda. And I really think we ought to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vagg is asked to speak, and I'll revisit your comment in a moment. And just to make everyone aware, Councillor Thomas is trying to join. I think he's slowly coming on board, so he will be joining in about a minute. Councillor Vagg.
Am I unmuted? Or do
You
I need
are indeed.
All right, okay. The latest thing I remember voting on was the proposed new houses down by the river along North Street. And we always vote whether we object or don't object to a planning proposal. And if we don't vote against it, we're seen as voting for it. And I don't think that is necessarily the case. And I believe that Somerset Live, the local paper, picked up on this and said the town council has passed this. I don't think we were saying we were for it. We were just saying that only some of us were necessarily against it. And I think we need to look at the way we deal with planning applications and don't say we're for something when it's just that we don't necessarily object, which isn't quite the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're very blank at me.
Yes, I think so. I think we just need to be better at how we summarised. I'm going to invite you, Clark, to unmute, and I'm going to mute you, Councillor Bagg.
Thank you, Chairman. It's only a recommendation, Vicky, and it's any comments are invited. It's you can say you object or whatever, but at the council stage, it's a recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, I hope you're okay and not too stressed. I just wanted to make you aware that we've moved your agenda item and to point 11 on the agenda, and we've therefore already had the picnic party in the park because we moved it to its, so your planning item will be at the end.
Okay, thank you very much, and apologies.
No problem. What we're now talking about is point 5, which is the planning application review, and what would be good practice for us as a council to implement going forward. Do you have any comments you wish to make about that?
Only really initially, it's just I think that it would probably be better if more than one person was talking or looking at the planning before each meeting. Whether at least 2 people, maybe 3. I think it would give it a better. I think it would give it better oversight if there was more than one person, and somebody else might pick up something the other person might miss. So I guess it would be a committee. So,
thank you. So, any other comments from Councillor Tudgay? I'm going to invite you to unmute, and I'm now going to mute you, Councillor Thomas.
I would totally agree with Councillor Thomas's view that I think we should have a small planning committee, such as Ian has said. You know, 2 or 3 pairs of eyes are better than one, and I really do think we should have a planning committee where we look at these planning applications, and then we can perhaps better inform the fellow councillors of you know what is happening, and perhaps we can make take a broader view of things. So I think going forward, we should have a planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've had some really good points in relation to planning and the management of planning applications as they come in. I think the point that resonates with me most is the fact that if we have a planning committee, then the process is we'd still have the 21 days to make a response back to SSDC, and we'd be able to identify a very clear proposal or a recommendation from the committee to then consider at council. So it would actually make it a clearer process, I believe. If people are in agreement with that, can you state if you wish to accept that as proposal, that we set up a planning committee and we then identify members of the council to be on the planning committee? So Councillor Gazine has proposed that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Vagg. Sorry, did you want to speak, Councillor Waters, or is that just, all right, that's okay. It's just your hand moved and I wasn't sure. And can I then have a vote from the council that we will then set up the planning committee, and then we can discuss who there might be. Councillor Greening wishes to speak, and then Councillor Tudgay. So Councillor Greening, you've been invited to speak.
In theory, aren't we the committee anyway, as the elected members of the town council. So
Yes.
I think we're just doubling up on our role, really, and therefore adding more bureaucracy and more paperwork and more propensity for confusion. I think if you want to persist with a committee, then I would suggest that those people get proper qualification into getting planning, getting a proper formal education in planning. That would be my suggestion if you're going to formulate a committee. Otherwise, I think we're just doubling up on what we're meant to be doing anyway. Okay,
Councillor Tudgay, did you ask to speak? No. Clark, you asked to speak.
The planning committee is always a good idea because I take on point Zach's views, but they can then go out into the community as a smaller committee, chat to people, invite their comments or whatever, and then give a full report to the full council.
Thank you. I have to say that I attended a chairman's meeting across Somerset with SAUC recently, and there were a number of parish councils and town councils that had planning committees, and they went out and did site visits with residents so that they could capture views in the moment, and then they brought those back through council on in a format that made it easier to digest, and also to ensure that the right decision was made. I'm just now going to invite Councillor Auld to speak.
Sorry, it's just that if we're supposed to take a decision as a council, then if a site visit is required, every single councillor is required to go and look at that site to be able to make a decision, surely.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is I'm going to go through the proposal because that's been put forward, and then the other proposal is I'm hearing is that we don't have a committee, but that we strengthen our processes internally in terms of how we collate the information to go back to Councillor Auld. Do you wish to speak? Because it looks like you're trying to speak. No? Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. Councillor Vag, you've been invited to speak.
Well, we have had site visits before on various planning applications when it seemed appropriate, and I don't think it's ever been everybody. It's exactly the same as a meeting. It's whoever can get there from whenever we're, so it's never going to be full council, very, very unusually.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else wish to speak before we then decide how we move forward? No, no one else wishes to speak. Okay, so the initial proposal was that we had a planning committee to review planning applications, maybe do site visits with the committee, but any other interested parties, and then make a recommendation for council to consider, not dissimilar to the one that Councillor Thomas provides us with when he reviews planning applications. Is anyone wishing to propose that? Councillor Gazine, is there a seconder? Councillor Thomas, and a vote from council, please. So I have myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrow, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Vag, Councillor Power, Councillor Waters, and Councillor Greening. Those against? Councillor Edington, Councillor Smith, and Councillor Auld. And those abstaining? Councillor Ralph and Councillor Greening. Sorry, Councillor Greening. Thank you. Picked you up. And Councillor Thomas, you voted for. So can I have the numbers? I'm going to invite you to speak, Clark, to confirm the numbers.
Thank you, Chair. I've got all four. Against was Councillor Edington, Councillor Smith, Councillor Auld, and abstaining was Councillor Ralph and Councillor Greening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you confirm if it's been supported or not? Councillor Clark, sorry.
It's supported. There's 5 against.
5 for it or against?
5
So-
against, so that makes 7, 8, 9. And it's more for it, that you set up a planning committee.
Okay, so are you clear on who's stated they're supportive of the proposal?
Yeah, and I will reconfirm that by listening again to this meeting tomorrow, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So moving on to, I've muted you again, Clark, just so you're aware. Now we're moving on to the checklist. So colleagues would have received the checklist. Oh, Clark, yes. Can you unmute, please?
Can we do the planning now? Ian's here, please, Chair.
We can if, do I have to vote on that again though? Because
No,
we have
no,
voted
no.
to move it.
Oh, right. So, oh yeah, you want to leave it to the end. Sorry, man.
Well, I know it was just, if we're, it's just the fact we voted to move it and I put it at the end to give Councillor
Right,
Thomas.
absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. So can we do the checklist next? So everyone happy with that? That's point 6 on the agenda. So councillors would have received a copy of the checklist. Can I ask if anyone has any comments for the clerk? No comments for the clerk. And can I ask if there is a proposer for the checklist, please? Councillor Power has proposed. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Vagg, and now can I have a vote, please? So if you're voting to support the checklist, for clarity, Councillor Edington, your hand is slightly out of screen, if you wouldn't mind, thank you. Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne Barrow, Councillor Goodsign, Councillor Power, Councillor Vagg, Councillor Edington, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, Councillor Old, and Councillor Thomas. Oh, has gone. I'm presuming there's an issue with his connectivity and he'll be back. So he hasn't taken part in the vote. So have you managed to secure all those who supported the vote? Clerk. Excellent, thank you. The clerk is nodding, just in case you can't see that on the screen. We now need to move to 2 councillors to sign the cheques. So are there 2 councillors who wish to sign? And normally it takes place tomorrow. So that's Councillor Waters, and the clerk is asked to speak. Clerk, can you unmute, please? Thank you.
Councillor Hinks has already volunteered, as you saw on the email, I think.
I don't remember that, but thank you for making us aware. So we have Councillor Waters and Councillor Hinks who will sign the cheques tomorrow. Do you need that to be voted, or are you happy with that, Clerk? Thank you. Clerk is affirming everything's okay to move on. So the next item on the agenda is Christmas decorations. I'm hoping that Councillor Thomas comes back because he's one of the speakers, but if not, are you able to speak to it, Councillor Greening? Councillor Greening, can you unmute, please?
Hopefully everybody received my email with the outline proposal. If not, I can reiterate what's being proposed. In essence, it's doing a 3-day workshop with the Blue School, Wincanton Primary School, creating Christmas decorations of a predetermined design that will be installed and illuminated in the co-op tree.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Thomas's proposal? Yes, Councillor Greening.
I can talk for Ian in that we've liaised on. Is he back? No.
He is just arriving back on the screen. So while Councillor Thomas is actually coming back online, can I ask, are there any questions for Councillor Greening in relation to the Christmas decorations working with the Blue School to be hung in the tree by the co-op? Councillor Vagg, you've been invited to speak.
Thank you. I'm not very good on knowing what these things cost. But I understand it, Councillor Greening, you're just looking to put your, like, the plastic icicles, stars in that one tree. Is that the only thing? Because it seems to me, forgive me, that seems quite a lot of money for just decorating one tree. But please tell me if I'm wrong.
I would say, in response to that, bear in mind that we spend £3,500 on a Christmas tree. So in many respects, I think it's good value. These things cost what they cost. There is, like I was outlining in the document, there's 3 days of workshops, there's 2 days of pre-production, there's another 2 days of install. So the rate that I charged out at, if it helps at all, is considerably less than my professional rate. But I understand that when one sees the figures, that you might feel that that's financially onerous. Personally, knowing what things cost in a Christmas lights department, actually it's very good value. So considering all the other benefits, the media, the community, I think it's a pretty good deal, but that will be up for the rest of you to decide.
Thank you. I'm going to now mute you, Councillor Greening, and Councillor Vagg. Are you wishing to speak again?
Yeah, just very quickly. When we were having physical meetings last year, and they're going to hate me for this, but Zach, Ray and Ian were sitting next to each other, and each of them was going to be charged with making a proposal re a tree. I think there was going to be a willow tree, a plastic tree and a real tree. And I just wondered what had happened to that whole avenue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vagg. I'm unmuting you, Councillor Greening.
I think we felt that Ray, Ian and I, that the Christmas tree as it stood historically was fairly sacrosanct. So we didn't really want to create a mutiny, a Christmas mutiny, by sacrificing or altering the attitudes and approaches to how the town represents Christmas. So what we have done is we've decided to kind of leave that intact and then highlight some of the other areas involving the community. Ian will go into his proposal, which is an ornamentation, I'm speaking for him now, but of the existing Christmas tree. And then I will do the installation in the tree outside the co-op.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Any other comments, Councillor Rold? Is this in relation to Councillor Greening's? Thank you.
It's a question to both Zach and Ian. If I presume you've checked with the schools to see that they're happy for you to visit under COVID regulations, and is there a plan B if you're not allowed to?
Thank you, Councillor Rold. I'll mute you now. Councillor Thomas, can I invite you to speak because you have yet to present your proposal?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
As Zach, Councillor Greening said, we are just going to basically enhance the Christmas tree that we're used to in Marketplace. I'm hoping everyone got this short proposal, which I emailed out today, and it will involve the entire Red School. In the past, we've had all the pupils from the Red School come into the workshop here at Bootmakers in shifts of about 20 at a time, and they come in the front door, go out the back door. I take Councillor Old's point about any social distancing. That we'll have to play that by ear, and I'm not sure there can be a plan B, but there might well be. That's a flexible thing at the moment. But yeah, so it's basically going to be an enhancement of the existing tree decorations using lights and baubles that are made by the pupils from the Red School.
Thank
So-
you. Thank you. Any other comments from council? Any other questions? Councillor Tudgay, I'm asking you to unmute, please.
In a similar vein to Councillor Ode, it does concern me slightly that if we have a reoccurrence of the pandemic even in a local form, and we had a local lockdown, I would really like to see councillors Greening and Thomas come up with some sort of emergency plan if the situation was such. I do think we must go on as if this thing is still with us and plan accordingly.
Thank you. So yes, Councillor Greening, I'm muting you, Councillor Tudgay, and I'm muting you, Councillor Greening.
I mean, I would suggest that the contingency plan is that the program is scrapped if government guidelines dictate that this venture is not to be endorsed from a public health and safety. Well, then it gets scrapped. I don't need that much of a cancellation time to be able to find an alternative. Or even, just to scrap the project. But I would say that there is a contingency plan of having the old HSBC wall illuminated with snowflakes again. That's my 10 cents worth of free advice.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Thomas, I've asked for you to unmute. Thank you.
I pretty much agree with Zach. It probably would have to be scrapped. But as I said before, I think as long as we stay flexible and just pay attention to what people are advising, if there's been no sort of certainly financial investment in either project prior to it being cancelled, then I don't, because all that we get is disappointment rather than loss. So I just think we just keep an eye on what's going on and be prepared to either continue or not continue. But as Zach said, if you can do other stuff in the town, lights wise.
Okay, so I'm aware that the children go back to school in September. I'm also aware that the schools are working really hard to set up their processes on current guidance. So I would suggest that we, as a council, if colleagues are open to supporting it, we do so with the proviso that national policy or guidance around how to manage groups of individuals, whether they be children or adults, coming together in an environment is reviewed again before we actually formally release the money for this project to commence. Does any, Councillor Greening, I believe you're already unmuted. Oh, could you unmute? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Thomas is on.
I would say that if you're going to adopt that strategy, just to bear in mind that the Blue School needs to have a lot of time for simple logistical reasons. Yes. So I would like to suggest that you leave, if you're going to come back to that decision, that you don't do it any later than middle of August.
Okay.
The Blue School I've already spoken to the headmaster there, so he's up for it. He is COVID sensitive in terms of protocols. Yes. So he would be making those allowances or putting those systems in place at his end. So I will be, in the early talks that I've had with him, I will be going into the school to do the workshops. They won't be held at the gallery like they were for the latest school plan. So okay. I don't think it'll be an issue. But like I say, I need to know as soon as possible, just so that the headmaster can make the necessary arrangements.
Clark, I will invite you in a second, but following that line of response, Councillor Thomas, I'm presuming you had the same conversation with the Red School?
Yeah, some time ago. I mean, in the past, when we've done this before, the pupils came to the workshop here So I don't know whether that could be reversed and we could go into the school, but we would have to get back in contact with the school to see what their plan is. So.
Thank you,
But
Councillor
I'll know
Thomas.
more. We'll go back to this week.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Clark, you wish to speak?
At this time, Chair, I'd like to remind councillors of the Code of Conduct and pecuniary interest, in particular page 3, before you take any proposals or any votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's true, because Councillor Thomas wasn't here when we declared interest at the beginning of the meeting.
And I do declare an interest, obviously. So.
And also, as you know, because it's pecuniary and it's financial gain, you wouldn't be able to do a proposal, seconder or vote. I'm just confirming the Code of Conduct there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Councillor Greening and Councillor Thomas are excluded from voting for each one of the proposals. So they can vote on one another's, but they can't vote on theirs. Yes, is that correct, Clark?
Yes, and in the past, if I could just give some history, in the past we have had councillors working for council as a contractor, but that has always been as part of a going out to tender process. But because this is so unique, I don't think we could take it out to tender, but that's council's decision. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just ask, because I don't remember there being a value that these two projects are actually proposed against in the standing orders? What is the sum that needs to go outside?
No, it is below. It's £5,000.
Yes.
It goes to tender, and also the precept for the Christmas decorations is £5,000. So whereas councillors were saying about the traditional tree or whatever, which Ian was going to decorate, there's still those funds there with these two proposals.
And before we move on, just because we have one pot of money, before we even, can I just ask, have we ordered the Christmas tree and do we know what it's going to cost?
No, not at all. We haven't ordered the Christmas tree at all. We were waiting for the Christmas committee's proposal. Thank you,
Clark. I'm going to now invite Councillor Tudgay to speak. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
I think this should be taken as a whole. I don't think we should vote on either Councillor Thomas's or Councillor Greening's proposals separately. I think the whole thing should be a package. And I think we should just take one vote and vote either yes or no.
Thank you. So with, are you happy with that as a way forward, Clark? Clark is nodding and agreeing that that's the way forward. So if it's taken as one, Councillor Greening and Councillor Tudgay, you are unable to vote. So the proposal is we support the Christmas tree decorations, working with the two schools in the town. Is there a proposer that supports that approach? Councillor Ralph is supported and a seconder, Councillor Vag, and can I have a vote from council, please, if you're in support of the proposal? So that's Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrett, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vag, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, voting in support, and those against the proposal, please. And abstaining, please. So that's Councillor Edington and Councillor Old. So there was no one opposing it and two councillors abstaining from voting. Are you happy with that, Clerk, in terms of capturing names? And I'm getting an affirmative from the clerk. Okay, so moving on from Christmas decorations, which is a lovely thing to talk about as we look outside in the dismal weather. We now move to point 8 on the agenda, which is the Stars of Wincanton. And Councillor Greening has already noted his declaration of interest for this agenda item, as I understand it. Do you wish to say anything else, Councillor Greening? And is there anything else that Councillor Greening is needed to say, Clark? No. Okay, thank you, Councillor Greening. Would you like to present Stars of Wincanton, please?
Well, it's really just reiterating the discussion that we had, was it last year, Sam? I can't remember, that we had put a portion of the precept towards this proposal. Really, it's just about dotting I's and crossing T's at this point. It's just about saying, does anybody want to join the committee with me to create a short list of suitable candidates for the project? That's all. I have been, just to add one note, I've been talking to the curators of the Wincanton Museum. They've already given me a list of figureheads, past and present, that might be suitable candidates. So yeah, anybody who wants to join me in that debate and that discussion, happily have you on board.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Eddington, you asked to speak and you are unmuted.
With this working committee, is this going to be to set the guidelines as to who is and isn't? You know, does somebody have to be born in Wincanton, live in Wincanton? Who is going to set the guidelines?
Well, that's what the committee will have to outline, yeah. Correct, yeah.
That's fine, I volunteer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eddington has volunteered to be on the working group. I'm now muting you, and Councillor Vagg, you're unmuted.
I'll volunteer as well.
Councillor Vagg has volunteered. Are there any other volunteers? Councillor Ralph has. Are you volunteering or are you wishing to speak?
No, I'd like to volunteer to join.
Excellent, thank you. Any other volunteers to be part of the working group? Councillor Power, do you want to speak or are you voting to come on board?
I just wanted to volunteer.
Thank you. Excellent. Anyone else who wishes to volunteer or have a comment in relation to Councillor Greening's discussion? No. Okay, so Clark, how would you like to proceed in relation to this agenda item? I'm going to ask you to unmute first, please. Thank you.
So we've had the proposal from Zach to have a working committee, a working group, sorry, rather than a committee, there for the Stars of Wincanton. I just need a seconder and a vote that Janet, Vicky, Lizzie and Tom will make up the working group, please.
Thank you. So we've had a proposer, which is Councillor Greening. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith is seconding, and can I now have a vote from the floor, please? If you're in support of the proposal to set up a working group with the named councillors that the clerk has just read. So Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrett, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vagg, Councillor Eddington, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Old, and Councillor Thomas. And those against? And anyone opposing? Okay, thank you. And I'm now going to mute you again, Councillor Greening and Clark. Point 9 on the agenda today is exit from lockdown. So this was a proposal that I put forward, or a motion I put forward last time, because as you're all aware, on the 23rd, 24th of March, the Wincanton Town offer came into being, and the offer comprises of 3 elements, one of which is the Town Hall hardship parcels. What I wanted to do was actually discuss with you how we move forward with that. Because if we look at the future as we see it now, the offers in terms of the ones that are currently in place for Wincanton, Live at Home and the Bolton Centre are still very much live, with the volunteers supporting those individuals, and the NHS letters for those sheltered run to the end of August. And indeed, I believe from what I've read in national policy and guidance that the position around the impact of COVID and people losing jobs and actually people not feeling able to come out of their homes at this time because of how they're feeling about doing so will go on for some time. And what I thought would be a useful way forward was for a working group to be set up so that the groups could come together, and any councillors or residents who wish to be party to that, to agree how we adapt the Wincanton Town offer to meet the needs of our residents going forward for the foreseeable future. Because I actually think, as Councillor Tudgay said, this isn't something that's going to change quickly. And I do think we need to actually, you know, be responsive to our residents in terms of their needs, and working with the food bank as well to ensure that meets the needs of our residents, our most vulnerable residents. So that's my outline of the discussion. Can I invite councillors to comment or have a view or about what I've just said? So Councillor Vagg are going to unmute first, then the clerk, and if anyone else put their hand up, you may need to do so again. So Councillor Vagg.
As some of you know, I work with CAB, and I've worked with CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau, throughout this thing. There's one thing with people shielding and not being able to get out and get food. There's another thing with people not being able to afford food. And at the moment, a lot of people are protected by the furlough. That furlough's going away. And I think financially, things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. So if we can keep an offer for food parcels, with or without the food bank going for those people that really need it, I think we're probably going to need that probably till the end of the year, I'm guessing.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor Vagg. Any other comments from councillors on the call? I'm going to now go to the clerk, because clerk, you put your hand up, didn't you?
If I can give councillors some history on what's been going on, or tell them what's been going on since the lockdown. I've issued just under 70 food parcels. And again, as Vicky said, that's shielded, can't afford it, debt problems, benefit problems, and I'm still issuing them now. Bear in mind, it's not as many. I'm working with Annette at the Bolton Centre. I think we issued 2 last week. We still have plenty of food parcels, and Gillingham Food Bank have not said they won't provide us with any in the future. And I tend to think we should keep the food bank going. We did have donations from members of the public of money. So we've got a little bit of money. So when we issue a food parcel, if someone has a dog, we can buy the dog food, or if someone has a child, we can buy the nappies. But I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to mute you again, Clark, just so that management of noise as much as anything. So what I'm hearing is a general consensus that actually setting up a working group made up of the offer in the town, but also residents or interested parties to actually come together so we can adapt on our town offer according to need. And work with Spark and others to actually enable that to be delivered going forwards. So that's what I think, my understanding of what we said is that we set up a working group in accordance with that. Do I have a proposer to support that? Councillor Power, and a seconder, Councillor Tudgay, and a vote from council if you support a working group being set up to support our town offer. So that's Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrow, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vagg, Councillor Edington, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, Councillor Rold, and Councillor Thomas. Thank you. And I believe there's no one against, because I believe I've seen all hands go up, and no one opposing or abstaining, sorry, I beg your pardon. So Clark, are you happy with that? Thank you. Are there any other proposals before we move on, just for clarity purposes on this item? If not, we'll move on. No, thank you very much. So in terms of, oh, before we move on, sorry, I beg your pardon. In terms of interested parties on the working group from council, are they, so we've agreed we'll set up a working group, but that membership of the working group, are there any councillors who wish to be a member of the working group? Councillor Ralph, Councillor Fagg, Councillor Power, Councillor Waters, and myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barry, would like to be a member of the working group alongside Live at Home, Sandra Cox and Annette from the Bolton Centre, and any other interested parties, including Gillingham, if that's appropriate. Clark, would you like to speak? Sorry, I'm just unmuting you. Thank you.
Could we add Spark to that group and I could send them an invite, Chair?
Mark?
Spark.
Spark, oh, beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. Yes, Spark. That would be great. I'm sure they would very much like to be part of that. Thank you. So Spark. And do we need to do anything further in terms of voting? Are you happy with that as a response?
If we could just have a vote, you've already voted for the working group and then just confirmed the name, Chair.
Okay. So in terms of voting to confirm the names, do we all support those councillors, sorry, and the proposed inclusion of those residents or groups in the community being part of that working group? So you want a proposer and a seconder, or do you want an overall vote? Sorry, Clark, I'm losing.
Yeah, sorry. You proposed to have the working group.
Yes.
You've seconded to have the working group. If we can have a vote, please, that those members will be part of that group.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So voting to support those individuals that put themselves forward, and I'm not going to read your names out because I'll lose perspective again. I'll lose the plot. So Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barry, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vagg, Councillor Tudgay, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, Councillor Old, and Councillor Thomas and Councillor Edington have all supported the vote for everyone to attend. I don't believe anyone was voting against, and no one was abstaining. Is that correct? Because your pictures move around the screen, so it's rather helpful if you actually say that if I've missed you or got the vote wrong. Councillor Vagg, have I missed you?
No, you haven't missed me. It's just that the clerk just said about telling Spark about this committee. I'm not absolutely sure, but if we currently have a village agent, I think we should include the village agent if we currently have one, but I'm not sure. Okay.
Yes, we do. So that is a really good point, Councillor Vagg, and thank you very much for making us aware of that. So Clark, we'll mute you again. I'll mute you again and unmute you, Clark. Are you happy with that? So it's the named councillors, Spark and the village agent.
Yes, we do have a village agent and I will get her involved. I'll invite her as well.
Excellent. And the Live at Home and the Bolton Centre. So are we now in agreement? We can move on from this item. Excellent. Thank you. I'm muting you again now, Clark. Right, now we're on to point 10, duties of councillor representatives on outside bodies. Now, firstly, I want to thank Councillor Waters for actually sending me a proposed outline of a role for a councillor attending an outside body. So thank you very much, Councillor Waters, for that. I very much appreciate it. So the rationale for this was that as councillors, we nominate ourselves and are supported to attend outside bodies. We then attend in our right as a councillor, and in that role, we then undertake certain duties. Now, I hope you don't mind, Councillor Waters, but I'm going to use your proposal as a framework to discuss this. Are you okay with that? And if you don't want me to, I'll talk to my own. Yes, that's an okay. I can use it. Thank you. So the job description that Councillor Waters put forward was for herself as a town councillor attending Live at Home. And it says, act as a link between the town council and Live at Home. So that's a conduit, that's a two-way conversation between the council, Live at Home, and Live at Home and the council. providing information on alternative funding sources, for example, the Good Stuff Fund, attending committee meetings when they're available and providing that information back to council when attending, reminding the Live at Home manager of dates of applications for grants from council. So that's not just the Good Stuff Fund, but that's also council grants on an annual basis. Keeping council appraised of any problems that might arise within the organisation, e.g. reduction of funds or management deficits. Invite managers to attend parish meetings or town and council meetings annually to report on spending of grant money, which obviously if they're in receipt, they would be invited to do so. Invite managers to attend the annual town council award ceremony, as we would invite all organisations in the town. And other things that I think would be useful are, as part of the feedback loop from a councillor attending a outside organisation, to provide a verbal report back to council on when we next have a council meeting. So it's knowing the dates of the meeting and then making council aware that you wish to provide. It could only be a couple of sentences, but that you attended, and if there are any key issues we need to be aware of, but also celebrating the good stuff. So that is a beautifully outlined role profile for a councillor attending an external body. I'm going to open it up to the floor for any commentary or questions from council. Anyone wish to ask anything? No hands are going up, so I'm seeing this as Councillor Tudgay. You're being invited to speak.
I think that was a very good job description, for want of a better way of putting it. I would suggest that if you could share this document with us all,
yeah,
and then perhaps when we get round to discussing our policies and our standing orders, etc., that this could be embodied in those things.
Okay.
And then it would be there forevermore, you know. So I think if it was shared with us, and then we could discuss it and read through it and look at it, and you know, when we because we have to deal with policies in the next couple of meetings, and we could involve it in roll it all together, is what I'm trying to say. I think that'd be a very good idea.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we develop a rogue profile, which is generic for any councillor attending any external body, to then recognise what their role is in attending those external bodies. Are there any other comments? Are you asking to speak, Councillor Thomas? No. Yes? No. Okay. Sorry, that's all right. It's just you put your pen up. That meant that it drew my attention to you. I apologise. Any other comments from anyone else? Okay, so what I'm understanding is if I share the rogue profile with the clerk will then put that into a format to present to council. Clerk, how would you like to proceed now so it meets with standing orders? You're unmuted,
yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. If you could send me that description, rather than job description if we called it duties, but it's up to the council. I will share it with the councillors, and the next meeting is when we discuss terms of reference and committees and whatnot, and it will be on there to be adopted as a generic duties of an outside body representative, if that's what the council wants. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you need us to vote at all on that?
No, I think that can be a statement. I think that can be a statement, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so as a statement, I will submit to the clerk a duties profile for councillors attending external bodies to then take forward to council at the next meeting to have a discussion and ratify if everyone's in agreement. Thank you for that. And as I said, thank you, Councillor Waters. Okay, moving on. We're now moving on to Councillor Thomas, to planning. This is your moment. So I'm going to ask you to unmute, please.
There you go. Okay. So I've got two applications here. One is for, sorry, I've got very bad light here. Application 20/1709/S73A, which is an application to vary condition 2, approved plans, planning approval 15/00825 full application, amended by 1503/630 S73 to allow internal reorganization of the building and changes to fenestration land at Dykes Way. This is the care home being built behind the doctor's surgery down Dykes Way. I did run this past Ray because it's quite a not complicated, but it's a very detailed list of plans, diagrams, and goodness knows what. And I couldn't really find quite what they were altering. But I think it's something inside that nobody can see. All I can say, really. So it's some kind of rearrangement of the rooms and maybe of the windows. But I couldn't see that it was a very material thing that we would notice. Okay. Unless
I'm sorry, Councillor Thomas. Did you have a look on the website for any comments from residents or other?
No comments. No.
There's no comments. I'm going to open it up to council now. So does any of councillors have a view or comment on this particular application? No? Okay. So what we're saying is for the application, I'm not going to read it out, but because it's too long, Dykes Way for the care home, are we proposing that we support the applicant? Councillor Tudgate be acting as a proposer for that? Do we have a seconded? Councillor Smith. And do we have a vote from council? So a vote from council saying we support the application and we do not have any comments we wish to make at this time. So Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrett, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Vagg, Councillor Edington, Councillor Tudgate, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, Councillor Old, and Councillor Thomas. Thank you. And anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you. Moving on to the next planning application, please, Councillor Thomas.
The second one is 20/01809/doc. It's the discharge of condition 13, litter management scheme attached to planning permission 19/03514 full. The erection of a restaurant with drive-through car parking, landscaping, patio, and associated works. Installation of 2 customer orders. It's basically McDonald's. And it's their litter control or limitation plan, which I think Sam sent out to us, and it's very detailed. And they're going to have litter patrols literally, I think, every hour. Signage. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll stop people dropping litter, perhaps, but at least they'll be picking it up.
Okay, thank you. So this is, we discussed this previously when the application came through before, and we wanted to, as a council, see more detail in terms of litter control in particular, because we were concerned about that. And there's 2 levels of litter control. There's one around the actual restaurant and one, I think it's 100 meters out from the restaurant. Yeah. That's reviewed every so many hours. So do we have any comments from council? Councillor Vagg, I'm just about to unmute you. So if you could accept it, please. Thank you.
Going by the amount of KFC litter we get at the edge of the park and around the skate park, it's obvious that a lot of people go to the edge of the park there and sit there along the railings on the seats there. And I think the edge of the park would be more than 100 meters from the restaurant. So I think it should be a little bit further.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Tudgate, I'm now inviting you to speak, and Councillor Vagg, I would then mute you. Thank you.
I think from memory, when we put this litter management scheme in place, it was to cover a radius of 500 meters. Now I fully understand why McDonald's don't want to cover that area, because that would encompass probably the Morrison's car park and other such areas. So I can understand why they don't want to do that. I was wondering whether we could do a bit of a trade-off and get some signage. I mean, there should be sufficient bins in the skate park area, because we've put in extra bins to what was there originally. But I do wonder if we could get them to sponsor some signage to try and encourage people to use the bins. And that's about all I've got to say, really.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tudgay. I'm now going to invite Councillor Thomas to speak, please.
I think it's probably a bit unreasonable to ask a commercial enterprise to do town litter picking. I mean, if they start going into the centre of town or onto way past their perimeter, they probably wouldn't. I wouldn't have thought accept that. They have got some signage which they're going to put on their bins nearby. I mean, we could ask them maybe if they could extend that to, rather than not extend their litter picking activity, but at least extend their presence and profile further into, as you say, the skate park or something, with these very bright signs that they've got. I think there is a 6-month review, or at least 6 months, maybe sooner than that, after the restaurant opens. So I think as long as we make sure we do review it and we go back to them, because if it's not working after 3 months and the place is covered in McDonald's wrappers, then obviously we have a right to go back to them, because part of their statement is that they will review it on a regular basis. So.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'm going to invite the clerk to speak. So could you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think if we give a bit of history when the KFC moved into town, I think, Ray, you might remember that was one of the things we asked for there, is if they would provide bins or signage or anything, but it wasn't part of the planning process. So I agree with Ian on this, is that we review it after 6 months, and then you can put in as a council your findings of what happened at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Any other comments from councillors? No? Okay, so what I'm hearing is we're still concerned about the litter, and that 100 metres does not seem far enough. However, what we're deciding, or what I've heard, the proposal is that we then review it within the timeframes that are within the application, to then ask again for additional signage around litter and the disposal of litter. Is that what we've discussed? Does anyone want to say anything different to what I've just said? Councillor Smith, I'm asking you to unmute.
The bit about the 100 metres, it says it's actually a minimum of 100 metres.
Minimum. I
haven't seen a specification for a maximum.
Okay, that's a really good point, Councillor Smith. So do we want to put anything in our commentary to ask that for clarity on the minimum and the maximum, sorry? What do people think? Because there are strong views about litter in relation to fast food restaurants, well, actually any litter, to be fair. Councillor Vagg, I'm going to invite you to speak. Sorry, Councillor Ralph, I beg your pardon. Wrong name, apologies.
That's okay, don't worry. I mean, I would have thought it's in our favour that there's no maximum stated, because if the plan is then up for review, then that means the maximum is up for review with it, surely. Okay, that's a really good point as well. Thank you for that. So what I'm hearing is the proposal is that we still note our concerns on litter, but that we will be reviewing it in 6 months to then have a further discussion with the restaurant provider. Is that what we've agreed? Is that the proposal we're looking to make? And who would like to make that proposal? Anyone?
Councillor Ralph, do you want to speak or make the proposal? Make the proposal. Yes, Councillor Ralph has made the proposal that we will review it after 6 months, but state on the application we still have concerns over litter and that we will review at 6 months. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Power. And now can I have a vote from the floor? So those councillors that are in support of that proposal: Councillor Ralph, myself, Councillor Shelbourne-Barrett, Councillor Gazine, Councillor Power, Councillor Fagg, Councillor Edington, Councillor Waters, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greening, Councillor Old and Councillor Thomas. Those against? Councillor Tudgay is against, and those opposing? Sorry, abstaining, I beg your pardon. No one abstaining, because I believe everyone has voted. Clerk, do you have that noted, or do you need anything clarified? The clerk is affirming a thumbs up that she's happy with that as a way forward. Anyone else? I'm moving on now to the next agenda item. Are there any other comments from Councillor Thomas in relation to planning? Do you wish to be unmuted, Councillor Thomas? No. Clerk, do you have any comments that you need to make in terms of responses? The clerk is saying no, she has no further comments in relation to planning. I'm then moving on from planning to correspondence, because picnic party in the park was covered earlier on in the agenda when we moved it around. So correspondence, colleagues would have received the clerk's correspondence today on email. The clerk would have received the clerk shared the correspondence with committee. Please can I ask that you now, clerk, if I ask you to unmute and talk further to those comments, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the correspondence that I sent to the councillors today was the email about the phased reopening of Somerset Library with the new order and collect service. Next was the reminder of the event from SALC, 20th of July, 4 till 6 p.m, which again talks about Somerset Unitary, which I believe the chair has volunteered to attend, and that is via a Zoom meeting. Next, it was an email from Tarina, who's the locality officer of SSDC. As we're not having play days this year down at the recreation grounds, she would just like to have a stall there on the 5th of August from 9:30 to 3:30 to give out activity boxes to people in the town. And underneath that email was the email from the play officer that all play days are cancelled. He did say in that email that some councils have already contributed to the play day. We normally contribute, but we haven't this year, so we will not be requiring a refund. And lastly, on the correspondence side, was the email from Avon and Somerset Police about the phone call scams about Tesco and unauthorised confirmations, and asking people not to respond to them because of the cost. Okay. I also have two other things to mention to council. The terms of reference for the committees, and I've seen that I had an email from a councillor asking why it wasn't on this agenda. It will be on the next agenda because I wanted to put out terms of reference for a planning committee in preparation for what may have happened tonight, which it did. Secondly, I've had requests from several residents. I don't know if council has seen the social distancing love heart in Bristol. If we can do it at the recreation ground. We can't do it on the cricket pitch, but there are areas where we could put a socially distancing circle, pocket, recreation ground, whatever. Mostly the picnic area. The picnic area is between the cricket ground and the skate park, and then maybe around the shelter. the British Legion have been in touch, and they really want to get involved for the VJ 75 Day, and they're quite happy to do stencils in the shape of poppies. It will be chalk paint, so it will wash away. It will not affect the cricket pitch. So I'd like, Chair, if you could give any comments, or ask councillors to give any comments on that. Chalk painting, social distancing down the rec.
Can I ask that, I don't believe I saw that on your correspondence today, because, sorry, Clark, would you mind putting that on email to anyway, because I think there's no time commitment to that, is there? We don't need to agree it today? Is that
No, it was just to get opinions today. Like I said, the British Legion they have volunteered to do all the work, so we could get it on the next agenda.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So what I'd like to do now is, Councillor Auld, what is it you'd like to speak about? Is it related to the Clark's correspondence?
It is, yes. Just for clarification, it is not the British Legion. It is a small group of individuals. Just for clarification, Sam. Thank you.
So can we just note, thank you, Councillor Auld. Can we just note that on the email to Council, and then we'll pick that up, if you wouldn't mind, on the agenda next time when we go through that. Public participation is now completed. We will not be responding to any other comments at this time. I am now going to ask that agenda items for the next meeting are, I'm actually going to turn your video off, Howard, please, because it's not appropriate to actually do that on a live transmission. And I will ask that we respond to you as council in relation to that. In terms of agenda items for the next meeting, I'd like to ask that the Good Stuff Fund is included on the next meeting, because we've held our first stakeholder meeting, and it would be great to actually review those recommendations from the stakeholder group, including to define the budget that each of those aspects will if agreed, be then reduce the sum of money down. So a budget alignment to go alongside the proposals, please. In addition, the AGAR, because we need to agree that unless by the end of July, unless we've agreed an extension into August, which I understand is available to councils during this time. But if not, can we have that on the agenda for next time? The other items are personnel policies. I'd like for those to be included at the next meeting, but for those also to be checked by South West Council, so that as we've paid for their membership, they do so, they review policies free as part of the membership. And at the next meeting, what I'd like to do is also offer the opportunity for council outside of live Zoom to understand what the offer is from South West Councils. So I would ask that the clerk set that up via Zoom, please, or we have that discussion to have that set up via Zoom. Next item on the agenda is neighbourhood plans I'd like to put forward, because we've had a number of meetings where we have discussed our current neighbourhood plan and the fact that it's not fit for purpose in terms of protecting the high street, with a define what the high street is, and also to protect the Wincanton with designated areas for building, both in terms of commercial and residential. So I'd like that to be brought forward on the agenda next time. And I also have a name contact, if helpful, Clark, to enable that conversation to move forward. And tonight was actually meant to be the Finance Committee. I would ask that that committee is reinstated alongside personnel once we've agreed the policies for that. So that's the agenda items I'm proposing. I'm now going to open it up to council to ask if there are any other agenda items councillors would wish to see at the next meeting. No? I'm now going to invite the clerk to speak.
Yes, Chair, the AGAR would always be within the time limit. As the responsible financial officer, that's my responsibility. As per the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suggestions for recommendations for the next agenda. Could I please ask you to email me those with the narrative you would like as a motion after standing orders? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Old, can I invite you to speak? Is it in relation to agenda items next time?
It is in items for the agenda. There's one complaint here. Lots of
Councillor Old,
pages.
can I stop you, please? Because that
Yes,
is not
you might,
the public
but that
record.
need to be dealt
I
with.
will now mute you. Thank you very much. So with that in mind, I'm now drawing the meeting to a close. Clerk, if there's no other further actions I would like, could you turn the camera off as well, please?
Could I just say one thing though, Chair?
No, unless it's related to the agenda for next time.
No, as you ended the meeting, I just wanted to ask if anybody noticed my old Wincanton school cup.
No, because we couldn't see it, I don't think.
Can I just show you? 2002. I brought it out especially for the meeting. Thank you. Sorry.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. So we're drawing the meeting to a close. I thank you very much for your time, and I would ask that councillors next time revisit our code of conduct and before the meeting, and also our policy documents. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.